NJ Spotlight presents its Roundtable series. In this program, Camden Schools and the Future of Urban Education in New Jersey. This program was recorded April 1st, 2013 at Rutgers University in Camden. This program is brought to you by the Cooper Foundation on the web at cooperhealth.org and by the New Jersey Education Association at njea.org and We Can Do Better for Kids on the web at wecandobetternewjersey.org. The panelists in this program are Gloria Bonilla Santiago, Overseer and Board Chair of the Leap Academy University Charter School in Camden. Sean Brown, a member of the Camden Board of Education. Karen Douglas Collins, a math teacher at Pine Point Middle School in Camden. Pam Garwood, Program Director for the New Jersey Education Association. Ryan Hill, Founder and Executive Director of Team Schools. George Norcross III, Chairman of the Cooper Health System. Monique Ragsdale, Camden Community and Parent Advocate. And Catherine Rebe, former member of the Camden Board of Education. The moderator for the program is John Mooney, Education Editor and co-founder of NJ Spotlight. In this program, Chapter 1, Introductions and Opening Remarks from the panel.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on what I'm sure is going to be a provocative and interesting conversation. My name is John Mooney, founding editor of NJ Spotlight, and I'll be their host and moderator today in discussing Camden schools and what it says for the future of urban education in New Jersey. For those who don't know us, quickly, NJ Spotlight is a 3-year-old news and policy website launched by a bunch of print refugees like myself who got out of the newspaper business and focusing on public policy issues like education, healthcare, energy and environment, and public finance. And part of what we do, and we hope you'll visit the site, but part of what we do we think is very important is we hold discussions across the state around some of these issues that we cover. And they're called public roundtables. We've held about 15 of them so far in different places, and this is the first time we're down here in Camden, and very excited about it, and certainly want to thank our host, Rutgers-Camden, for a wonderful space for doing this. And I know parking, you had to take a bus to get here, but hopefully most folks are here, and hopefully you can get comfortable and enjoy yourselves. And for this one, well, let's just say the timing was pretty good. I wish I could say that NJ Spotlight was so nimble that Governor Christie announces something and a week later we're ready to hold a public forum around it. And it's okay if you think that's the case. But in all honesty, we've been thinking about this for a long time. Camden's certainly been a hotbed of activity around school reform, and we wanted to come down here, and we will say we are pleased that Governor Christie saw this was happening and got his announcement in just in time. But I don't want to, obviously, I don't want to make too much light of that. This is serious stuff. The stakes are high on everything we're going to be talking about today, not the least of which for the generation of children who are now in the schools and the generations to come. We hope to touch all of that in some form or another. Certainly we're going to talk about the state's takeover plans and what was announced last week, but also the turnaround efforts that are already underway in the schools, as well as the role of charter schools in the city, and then the coming role of Renaissance schools and how they will all affect Camden's children. It's a lot to cover. We have a very large panel, admittedly, but we think it's worth it, and we think this is the time and place to have this conversation. Before we get to that, a few logistics. Included in some materials that you hopefully received, we gave you some bios of each of the panelists, short bios of them. We also gave you some postcards, which has our site our site's URL, but also a way to join our daily and weekly digest. We hope you will do so and continue to follow the coverage. We hope also that you will share it. We tell everybody, just share it with one friend or colleague, and that doubles our audience, and it's a wonderful thing. So please do so. We also had made available some index cards. So for folks, really what's important in this is that there is some interaction between ourselves and the audience. And a good way to do it is we ask you folks to write questions or comments on index cards, at which time you can wave, and I'm going to introduce NJ Spotlight staff who are going to be sort of floating around the outside. It's Kevin Harold, our publisher. I think I saw Lee Keogh, our managing editor, Tom Johnson, our energy and environment writer, Andrew Kitchenman, our healthcare writer, and I think that covers us. So Paula Saha, we'll get to Paula's role. What is an event these days without a hashtag? And yes, we are going to be live, not only live streaming this event for folks to watch, but we'll also be having a Twitter conversation. And that hashtag, if you haven't noticed the signs all over the room, is Camden ED, Camden Ed. And please feel free, but any of our audience on the live stream, feel free to tweet about this. Certainly, even if you have questions, tweet them in. If we have enough conversation going, it's something we will publish tomorrow in our coverage of this event as well. Certainly, not last but not least is our sponsors, and I want to stress that we couldn't do this without support of sponsors. I'm not sure NJ Spotlight would exist without support of sponsors, and it's very important to us, and we are very thankful to have such a great group, and it really means a lot. And they are the NJEA, the New Jersey Education Association, the Cooper Foundation, and We Can Do Better for Kids, the advocacy group, all with big stakes in this discussion, and again, it's really with great appreciation that we have them on board. The last ground rule is it's civility and brevity. The civility part is we really like these to be conversations. They are not really meant to be debates, to go back and forth and pro and con. It's a chance to get some key people in the room to talk about these issues in a conversational way. That comes the brevity piece. Pretend, and I say this to the panelists as well, we're going to pretend we're sitting around a kitchen table of sorts, and we're having a conversation. And when you sit around a kitchen table, you don't make little speeches to each other. You converse, and you have some back and forth, and that's what we hope will come of this. So let's get going. And let me introduce our panel. We have, and I'll take it from the chronology of the table. We have Monique Ragsdale, a community and parent advocate who I've gotten to know in Camden. She's a applause. This is the one chance where you can applaud. She's a Camden organizer with Save Our Schools New Jersey, a grassroots organization advocating for public education statewide, and also a mother of an 8th grader boy, right, in Camden schools. Next to her is Catherine Rebay. She served on the board from May 2011 until last week, when some of you might know, she resigned following the announcement of the state's intervention plans, and she'll probably talk a little bit about that. She is also very interesting, a high school chemistry teacher, first in Camden schools and now in Collingswood. Next to Catherine is Karen Douglas Collins. She is a math coach and leader in Pine Point Middle School. She has worked in Camden Public Schools since 1986 and been a teacher in elementary, middle, and adult education, and now is a math coach and leader at Pine Point. Next to her is George Norcross, chairman of Cooper Health System. I think it needs no introduction. He's been a prominent voice in the state and in Camden around some of the issues of education, and where I've gotten to know him in my new role. Served as trustee of Cooper Health and Cooper University Hospital in Camden since 1990. Now executive chairman of Connor Strong Buckelew, the insurance and brokerage and consulting firm. And notably, his foundation, his family foundation, and also Cooper Foundation is working in partnership on the Renaissance schools, which we will be discussing today as well. Yep, please. Next to George is Ryan Hill, founder and executive director of Team Schools, somebody I've gotten to know out of Newark, actually. He founded the first Team Academy in Newark, starting a network that's since grown to 5 schools, the largest network in the state of charter schools, and of course is teaming up with the other foundations to open the 5 Renaissance schools in Camden. Next is Pam Garwood, Program Director at NJA, coordinator of the NJA's Priority School Support Initiative, which is helping schools do the turnaround efforts and working inside the schools and with the district. Before that, she was an elementary school teacher and facilitator in Bridgeton. And in my Googling, I discovered I think you were Teacher of the Year at some point out of Bridgeton. So congratulations. And then another person who probably needs no introduction in the city, Gloria Bonilla Santiago of Leap Academy University Charter School. I've known Gloria since I think 1997. Was that when Leap opened? One of the first charter schools in the state. She is, of course, also a professor of public policy at Rutgers-Camden and director of its Community Leadership Center. And our last, And the last person at the table is not Patricia Kenny, an assistant superintendent who hopefully will still be attending but is running late. And we've asked Sean Brown, a member of the school board, to join us and be part of the conversation. I had hoped to call on him from the audience anyway, so I figured until Pat can join us, Sean will be there. So, yep. Let me start with the state takeover. It's the issue, it's the big issue in the room right now, obviously, and in this city. And I'm going to be fairly open-ended on this, and I wanted to start with those who are most affected by it. And I warned Karen Douglas Collins that she'd probably be the first person I'd call on. But what was as a teacher and somebody who's been in the district as long as you have, what was your reaction last week when you heard the news of the state at least proposing to come in and take control of the district?
Well, first I would like to begin with asking, what does it really look like, you know, as a teacher in Camden City? You know, we know, and along with myself, that the state has been in Camden City for some time, but also we will have the same students, it will be the same communities, same environment. So what exactly does that mean, you know, with the state takeover?
Thank you. Let me jump to Sean. You didn't even know you were going to be on the panel before you showed up, but we're going to go to you right away. You're a member of the school board that is going to have to act on this and decide whether to appeal or not. There's been some indication that the school board is on board. Certainly some of its members, some of its leaders stood up there with Governor Christie last week in announcing this, and all indications from, I went to the first board meeting afterwards, all indications there was still some support for it. Tell me your reaction when this came down, and where do you predict it's going in terms of the school board's position on it?
So first, good evening to everybody. I know I see a lot of friends and people that I know out in the audience, and to everyone else, it's nice to see you. So to answer the second question first, my reaction, I guess 2 Sundays ago, our board president confirmed what had been a rumor for a week before that and said that the governor was coming to announce the takeover the next day. And my reaction was surprise because of the timing, but not necessarily because of the action itself. There's a lot that's going on, most of which probably hasn't made the newspaper. There's lots that's going on in the Camden School District in the last few years since I've been on the school board. There is a process known as QSAC, where every school district in New Jersey has to go through it, but it's almost like an audit of a lot of the departments and things. And Camden went through the process like every other school district and gets a score, and a lot of the scores were really, really, really low. And just based on those scores alone, the school district could have been taken over when they first came out. The district had an opportunity to provide a response to that, saying this is what we're going to do to fix these things. And when we look at the actual takeover information on paper, you see that it's cited that the response of the school district, which was approved by the school board that I sit on, that the response wasn't where it should have been.
So, on one hand, surprised at the timing, or was it, in your view, somewhat inevitable that this was?
Yes, I would say it is inevitable, and the only surprise in timing is that, and it's no surprise to anybody, is that we were, I get a call about 28 hours before we're interviewing finalists to be our next superintendent. I think a lot of people had put a lot of hope into that process, and that a new superintendent would be able to transform the school district and the people, and it was a fair and proper process, and the candidates that we had got there the right way without the influence of politics or outsiders. I think we're all very happy about that. We're happy with the quality of the finalists that we had. So there was surprise for that reason.
Let me ask another school board member. Not anymore. You made a little noise in announcing that day that you were going to resign. I guess fair to say in protest. Tell us a little bit. This is, I think, the first time you've spoken publicly since all that came down. Correct me if I'm wrong, but tell us a little bit about your thinking as it came down.
Mostly, I think sort of my first reaction is just really sad. This is something, and we can do this, we can sit here in a room and we can talk about the ideas and the processes behind it. But at the end of the day, these are kids and these are teachers, and there's really high stakes here. And it made me really sad because I think this is not the way to fix this problem. I think this is kind of an easy and showy way to address what's going on, which, yeah, like Sean said, there are a lot of problems. I don't think there's anyone who can look and say, well, there's no problem here. I don't know why people are getting involved. Everything's just fine. Clearly, there are real problems. But I don't think this is the way to address it. I think this is politics getting involved in education. And I think that to make real effective change in education, we need to let educators lead that.
Let me ask some of those outside the school system who have been obviously following it closely, and George Norcross, and obviously this has been almost a crusade for you in terms of improving the state of education for Camden children, and you and I have talked quite a few times about it. Give me when this was coming down, you may have known it was coming, but give me your sense of your thinking when this was announced, or you became aware of it, and whether your initial reaction to it as a step to help the schools or not.
Thank you. As long as I can remember, some 40 years at least, the residents of this city and the public have been in broad discussions about the failures of the public schools in the city of Camden and throughout the region and throughout our state. In 40 years, I would say things changed for the good. The families of this city have continued to suffer and suffer endlessly. I don't blame the teachers. Obviously, the families and students are not to blame. I blame the administration. I blame the leadership. Some of the members of the recent leadership accepted and condoned a no-show superintendent in the last 3 to 5 years. I don't recall hearing that kind of outrage when the superintendent was AWOL. I think what the governor did was the right thing. Is it a be-all, end-all answer to changing the public schools and giving the families of this city what they deserve? Of course not. Takeovers in this state, in Newark, Jersey City, Patterson, have lacked critical elements in order to ensure success. There's been a lack of parental engagement, a lack of engagement with the NJA, which is obviously a critical part, a lack of engagement directly with teachers, community leaders, and religious leaders. I say enough is enough. What's going on has failed. It's time to start over, look towards other alternatives, other ideas, think outside the box. Because what's been going on hasn't worked. And each year another class is being sentenced somewhere they don't belong.
Thank you. Let me, Gloria, speak to it a little bit. You've somewhat been on the outside, but you're obviously very connected to Camden, the city and its children. What was your reaction to what the governor announced last week?
So thank you so much for inviting me to this wonderful panel, and I look for the opportunities whenever we can to help children. And as you know, I spent 20 years of my career building LEAP and being on the floor. So I know the pain of what it is that it takes to do this work, and I feel the pain of the teachers and of the kids and the parents whenever we don't succeed. So how I saw the news, like George said, is an opportunity for coming together to how do we fix it? See, I want to move forward. I want to be part of the group that says we have some things that have worked for us that we could share, that we want to work together with the district. The most important thing here is the kids, not the adults. I think that we spent an incredible amount of time discussing about, what went wrong. I think that this discussion tonight has to be about how do we come together as a group of leaders here in the city, because we have the anchor institutions, we have the charter schools, we have the Renaissance schools now. We have wonderful principals, and I've got to tell you, very seldom do I advocate for the educational leadership program that we run at Rutgers, but we have trained a cadre of principals to send them back to the district, and not one of them was given an opportunity to become a principal. I welcome this opportunity now for those principals, and I see some of them in the audience. And I actually sent a list today of those principals to the leadership in the state, of people that I know are great principals in the district that haven't had opportunity to lead. So it seems to me that this is an opportunity, that's how I see it, to come together, to work as a unit, to really save the children, because this is all about the kids. If it's not, then we are in the wrong business.
Why do you think, and I'm going to follow up with each of you on this, but why is it different under the state? I'll bring in even Ryan Hill on this, I know I'm not asking you to speak for the state. And our first question of the night is, why is the state not here? I invited them, I swear, and I invited them repeatedly, and they have sat on other panels for us. We've done a bunch on charter schools and teacher quality and graduation requirements, and this one they conspicuously said no thanks, but no thanks. I think now we know why, because of the timing of their announcement. I then made the offer afterwards, and they still would rather sit it out. So hopefully we'll come back here and have a conversation with some state folks about it as well. There may be some state folks in the room as well. Hopefully we'll be taking this conversation back. But let me ask Ryan Hill, you're in Newark, and you obviously don't speak for the state, but you've been in a district that is state-run, and you have a sense of it. Newark is 15 years plus at this point. Has had 3 different superintendents, 5 different governors playing one role or another. And I think one of the important things about state takeover is it's not one thing. There's the administrations change, superintendents change, and the like. But speak from your community perspective in Newark to what impact it does have, and tell the folks a little bit about how Newark has fared through this, and maybe if there's any lessons for Camden.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think what we've heard up here about it so far is kind of on the money, in the sense that the mere act of the state taking over isn't going to be a magic wand, silver bullet solution to whatever is going on in Camden right now. In Newark, we've seen a lot of stuff as a result of state takeover that's both good and bad. Mr. Norcross mentioned some of the things that didn't work so well, and I would say the absolute key to making it work is having the right superintendent in place. So whoever the state chooses as that superintendent is going to be key. Just speaking from the charter sector, the superintendent in Newark doesn't affect us directly so much, but what we have seen over the years is, for a long time we had superintendents who were either neutral or hostile to charter schools, and that mentality sort of trickled down throughout the district. And one of the issues we have hundreds and hundreds of visitors, and some years as high as 1,000 visitors within a single year to our schools, and we've had more visitors from South Africa, from London, from Germany than we've had from Newark Public Schools. And that was because there was an us and them sort of divide mentality that did trickle down from the top, or at least wasn't actively fought from the top. Now that we have a superintendent, a state-appointed superintendent, who sees the whole city as part of her purview, who sees education for kids in Newark, regardless of what kind of school they're in, as part of what she's concerned with, the dynamic's a lot different. And so it's way too early to say what the results of that will be. But what's glaringly obvious to us is what we all know in education, is that the leader matters. And the leader of the Newark Public Schools, that position matters a lot. And whomever they choose to be superintendent of Camden City Schools is going to matter a whole lot as well.
Monique, I don't want you to think I forgot you. Listen, you're listening to this, and you've followed the board closely, and I think you and I spoke in the past about, there was somewhat of an ultimatum letter back in August that the state issued, and clearly had some language that they were inclined to go this way if things didn't go as planned. Was there some sense of inevitability for you that you'd be in this place? Give us, your reaction.
My reaction when I first heard it, I was kind of like shocked, but not really, because and my whole reaction to the state takeover for the school is not really, it's not overly well. I don't see any promise in it, and mainly because the state was here before. We had appointed board for the last 3 years. Everyone's talking, oh, maybe this is promise, a new superintendent. Our problems are in the classroom. I want to hear from the teachers. I want to hear from the students. I want to hear from the people what is the problems that we are facing, and that's what we should be dealing with. When you deal with reform, you have to deal with what's going on inside the classroom. And as a parent, I'm just seeing how everything goes wrong. I mean, it's great that we have a panel. We all can discuss this. But truthfully, I think that everybody's going about it the wrong way. Reform is reform. We can't just section off, okay, we're going to do this for this little side or do this for this little side. I see kids as whole. I see all the city kids. And I feel as though we should come together and we should be fighting to help all our kids and find out, why don't they have materials? I mean, this is something that I know. Why don't they didn't have materials when the state was here before? They don't have materials now. This is upsetting to me. This is supposed to be about education. You're supposed to be teaching children. I don't feel as though, you give someone, testing units, even the rec centers. The rec centers, there was a big hope that when they came in, before the state
These are the
over,
regional achievement centers, the state's sort of new entity that is basically in the Camden schools.
Right, they're in our schools
Yeah.
now, and they're supposed to be, assisting the teachers with instructions and everything. And I tell you, when I went and I surveyed, because I want to see what my child is learning. And when I surveyed what they was doing, they were testing our children every 6 weeks. And I'm asking them, where's the materials for our children to go against us? And I'm telling you, it hurts me to see, because even as a student in college or anywhere, how can you learn without the resources?
But this is a district that is spending, by the math, and math is done differently by different folks, but this is spending $24,000 a kid. Some people have put that number even higher. I mean, there's money in this district, and you guys are both on the, you were on the school board, and Sean was as well, and you had a say in that budget. Where's that money going if we have, and I can ask Karen on this too, if the resources aren't necessarily in the classroom? I mean, Catherine, do you want to speak to it?
I think one of the things that absolutely blew me away the first year that I was on the board, the first time I went through the budget. The first time I went through the budgeting process is seeing, so we looked at the previous year's budget, what had actually been spent of what was allotted the previous year's budget, and then predictions for the next year's budget. And I'm looking at the budget, and again, I started as a classroom teacher in Camden. I've been there where I'm begging for supplies.
You started there.
And I'm looking at how much money is set aside for supplies and how much was actually being spent. And there was a glaring difference between money that was allocated and money that was actually being spent. And I think that has been a consistent big issue, making sure that money is being spent where it matters, and that's in the classrooms where things are needed.
But isn't that an argument for change of management to make sure that the money's going to...
Remember, all of our budgeting and all of our financial, everything that we do has been overseen and signed off on by a state monitor for quite a few years, and that in particular.
Sean, you're still on the board. I mean, I think seems to be a consensus here that the district hasn't worked as well as it could. The board has a role in this, and and certainly, I guess the point of at least the state taking over, and you'll be under the takeover, they would become an advisory board, and I think at least under the law there would be 3 additional members appointed by the state. But speak to, you're representing the district. You're the one person still in management, somewhat. Speak to that. Obviously there's some issues of resources not reaching the kids.
Okay, there's a lot there. So first, my term is up on May 15th, and after the last board meeting, when I said to the mayor, I'm sure that would be my last day on the board. But when the bigger picture of resources, no one can argue with the student expenditure that you have in Camden and the results that you get in education that the money's not being spent properly. So let me tell you a little story. For those that may know me, you know sometimes I'm a bad boy and go do my own thing. So one day, I'm in the central office, which is right around the street from here, and the warehouse is connected. That's matter of fact, that's what that long section is if you look at the building from the outside. So I go down there, and there are at least 100 boxes of smart boards, and this was the third week of August in 2011. Third week of August in 2011. And that matters, and I'll tell you why in a second. So I'm there, and I see all these smart boards, and I have my phone, and I take a picture of the smart boards on my phone, and send the picture to my fellow board members and to the superintendent, who was Dr. Young at the time. The message that I got back was that security and maintenance should not have let me in the warehouse. I was asked, you know, they were talking about, you know, where board members should be and not be, and are people going to escort people? And at a certain point, somebody had to say, I kind of think the issue is that there are a bunch of smart boards and boxes in the warehouse, and it's 2 weeks before school starts. So that happens. A week later, that was a Monday. I'll go back the next Monday after the hoopla. I don't really care about who doesn't like it. I go back there again. So now everybody knows that Sean Brown was in the warehouse. Guess what was still in there? The boxes and boxes of smart boards. This district has spent money for every freshman at the magnet schools, which would be about 200 students, to have a laptop. You go to the magnet school, and I see a teacher here from there. You think all the students there have laptops that they use? They don't. We pay money for every administrator in the district to have iPads. I've sat in a board meeting and heard people playing Angry Birds. And when I said that at a board meeting, they didn't use it anymore. So as a board member, we ask for justification of, you want me to vote yes to this? Why do you want me to vote yes? So we would need all of our administrators to have iPads so that they can evaluate teachers easier. And so I go to school. I go to the schools. And I meet the principal. I say, hey, principal, how's your iPad going? How's the thing going evaluating teachers? And the response either, I don't have an iPad. And if I do, no one ever talked to me about evaluating teachers with it. And then you get back to the board meeting, and I bring it up, and it's no, you shouldn't. We're not supposed to talk about these things. So there's clearly a waste of money. Clearly, it's a leadership issue. And I just want, if I may, just respond to something that was said earlier about that the state has been here. The state has been here, and the state has been very effective in certain ways, and it's been very ineffective in certain ways.
How so?
So how's it? Okay. So how's it been effective? And I'm not saying this is a big deal. It's been effective in that you have had, you've had clean audits in certain ways. You've had a level of accountability where either large purchases haven't been made, or there's been monitoring of certain things that most could argue would be bad if they happened, then they didn't happen because it was stopped at the state level. It's also been bad in a few ways. I know Ms. Ragsdale mentioned the regional achievement centers, which are in every school. And I said this last week at the board meeting. There's a lack of communication between these groups that are in every single school that get to tell teachers and principals what to do, yet there's no evidence that they have a daily communication with the teachers and principals that are actually in those schools. So they have oversight powers and are able to say what to do because the schools aren't performing well, but there's no evidence that they actually talk to the people that work in the schools. Now, as a board member, I'm lied to all the time because people tell me what they think I want to hear. So we hear all the time about how great these things work, but then the evidence shows that they don't work. And I have to give, because I see a few board members in the room, these, and I'm real honest, most of the board members vote yes on these budgets. Catherine voted no on the first budget. We all voted yes on the last one because it was the best, and it was created the best of all of them. But a lot of times, and this goes, as we participate here in a democracy, you have to count on the people that get to vote their conscience and vote based on facts. And that's one of the things that has gotten us in this position.
Yeah, and somebody, I don't want, somebody mentioned is Mr. Brown speaking for the board. He is not speaking for the board, and I just want to make it clear. He's, a member of the board that we invited up here, and obviously there's a lot of different opinions on this issue, and I wanted to be clear on that. One of the big things that the state takeover is going to bring fairly quickly, if it all goes through, is the appointment of a new superintendent and a management structure that is going to have a role in the next teacher contract, which is expiring at the end of this year. I think the principal's contract has already expired. And I don't want to put her on the spot as speaking for, the local union, but I warned her a little bit that I might ask. The state takeover issue. There are a couple. NJA represents the districts or the locals in Jersey City and in Paterson, not in Newark. What does this mean to NJA from that perspective? Does it change the playing field for you guys? Speak a little bit from the contract negotiation piece. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Pam Garwood. Yes.
I really want to talk about the state takeover, not the.
Yeah.
This is a collective bargaining district, and they were collective bargaining. The NJA field rep, the union president, had personal issues tonight, so they're not here. So I do not want to even presume to speak on their behalf, but they are dedicated to this district. They will do whatever they need to do to make sure the kids and students and teachers and ESP have what they need, and they will support the board and whatever they can do to have a comprehensive, clean, collective bargaining process.
Are you hopeful of that process?
I'm not after the last one. It took them 2 years. You worked without a contract, I think, before they settled. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting.
It'll be interesting.
For more information on NJ Spotlight programs, visit the website njspotlight.com. We produced this program in the studios of Lubetkin Global Communications in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, on the web at lubetkin.net. For everyone at NJ Spotlight, this is Steve Lubetkin. Thank you for joining us, and take good care. NJ Spotlight, where issues matter.